What happens when America's most talked about former royal sits down with one of television's most trusted journalists? At first, it seems like a polished morning show segment. Bright smiles, polite exchanges, and a studio glowing in CBS's signature orange and blue. But beneath the calm surface, tension simmers. With each question, the atmosphere thickens. Meghan's answers grow sharper, and Gayle's patience is tested. By the time the conversation derails, viewers are left stunned, wondering if they just witnessed one of the most dramatic confrontations in morning TV history. The CBS Mornings studio buzzed with its usual energy. Crew members moved quietly in the background. Cameras rolled smoothly into place, and the large screens displayed the familiar orange and blue backdrop that millions of Americans had come to associate with their morning routine. Gayle King, poised as always, with her notes neatly arranged before her, spoke with calm authority, anchoring the broadcast. Across from her sat Meghan Markle, wearing a fitted navy blazer over a cream blouse, her hair cascading in soft waves. Her posture was deliberate, exuding control and confidence. To any casual viewer, Meghan appeared the perfect polished guest, ready to highlight her latest philanthropic project. "Meghan, thank you so much for joining us this morning," Gayle began warmly, smiling across the studio. "I know you've been working on a new initiative, and I think our viewers are eager to hear about it." Meghan returned the smile, though hers seemed calculated, precise, as if rehearsed. "It's always a pleasure, Gayle," she said, her voice smooth. "This project is about bringing awareness to issues that often go overlooked. It's about using my platform to spotlight what truly matters." Gayle nodded. "That sounds meaningful. What personally inspired you to take this on?" For a brief moment, Meghan's tone softened, speaking about compassion and the desire to make the world a better place. The audience nodded and clapped politely. Everything seemed as CBS producers had planned: uplifting, humanizing, hopeful. But Gayle, experienced in navigating deeper waters, leaned in subtly. Her smile remained, but her eyes sharpened. "Meghan," she said, her voice calm, "you've spoken often about your personal truth, but some people question the consistency of your story. For instance, when you told Oprah that you and Harry had a private wedding before the official ceremony, the Archbishop later contradicted that. How do you reconcile that difference?" The studio's energy shifted instantly. Meghan's smile tightened, barely noticeable but enough for viewers at home to sense the change. She adjusted her blazer sleeve before responding. "Well, Gayle," she said, her voice colder, sharper, "it's interesting how people focus on technicalities rather than the emotional reality of our experience. What Harry and I shared was sacred to us. Whether others pick apart details doesn't change our truth." Gayle nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. But some might argue that truth should be universal, not just personal, especially when shared publicly." A faint, dismissive laugh escaped Meghan. "With all due respect, Gayle, you weren't there. Neither was the Archbishop in every moment. It's easy to comment from the outside, but you didn't live it." The audience shifted uncomfortably. The morning show pleasantries were starting to vanish. Meghan's tone carried a subtle arrogance that made Gayle's brow crease almost imperceptibly. Yet Gayle pressed on with composure. "Fair point. But let's consider another example. You've said you had no media training before joining the royal family, yet some palace insiders claim you received extensive briefings. Are they wrong?" Meghan's soft smile disappeared. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Palace insiders," she repeated, with a hint of disdain. "Anonymous voices who built careers protecting an outdated institution. I lived it, Gayle. I know the truth." That edge returned, that tone placing her above the questions, above accountability. Meghan wasn't merely answering as she was dismissing, brushing aside Gayle's words like an annoyance. Gayle inhaled slowly, maintaining a neutral expression. Years of live TV had honed her patience, her calm under fire. But inside, sparks were igniting. She glanced at the clock, knowing there were still segments to fill, silently wondering if this was about to spiral beyond what producers anticipated. The audience could feel it too. The polite applause had faded. Viewers later described the change as palpable, a sense that something was about to erupt. Gayle moved her pen across her notes, steadying her rhythm. She had more questions that could not be avoided. Meghan leaned back, chin slightly raised, her posture daring Gayle to push further. The calm before the storm had passed. The storm itself was just beginning. The studio lights burned brighter, or maybe it only felt that way. Meghan maintained the poise of a duchess on a throne, fingers delicately laced in her lap, chin perfectly tilted. Gayle, ever professional, kept her warmth, but beneath it lay steel. She knew the energy had shifted. The conversation was no longer about philanthropy. It had become a test of endurance, and Gayle would not falter. "So, Meghan," Gayle began softly, choosing words carefully, "in your Oprah interview, you said you felt isolated and unsupported during your pregnancy. You mentioned being denied mental health support. Yet some former palace staff insist resources were available. How do you respond?" Meghan's eyes hardened, but a faint smile hinted at condescension. "Gayle, people love to rewrite history without living it. I was there. I suffered while others speculate. Perhaps they prioritize protecting the monarchy over speaking the truth," Gayle offered, her tone calm but firm. Meghan's voice dripped with disdain. "There's no humility in expecting explanations from those who never lived it. Lies and distortions are easier for others to spread than self-reflection." A stir passed through the audience. These weren't the polished PR answers typical of morning shows. They were biting, unapologetic. Gayle steadied herself, inhaling deeply, using her training to maintain composure. Her note cards moved deliberately, giving herself a beat before continuing. "All right," she said, calm but firm, "let's pivot. You've expressed wanting privacy after leaving the royal family, yet you've written books, filmed documentaries, and given high-profile interviews. How do you reconcile this public presence with your desire for privacy?" Meghan's smile sharpened. "Privacy doesn't mean silence, Gayle. It means control over what we share. Refusing to be silenced by the palace or media doesn't negate my right to privacy. I don't owe anyone explanations, least of all to hypocritical critics." The audience murmured uneasily. This was no longer a guest promoting a cause. This was a woman on the offensive, dismissing every question as beneath her. Gayle tilted her head, voice measured. "I'm not trying to insult, Meghan. I just want to understand the balance you describe." Her reply was swift and cutting. "Then perhaps you should try harder, Gayle, because implying my husband and I don't deserve to tell our story is absurd. That I even must explain this shows how entrenched bias remains." Gasps rippled through the studio. Meghan's tone was unmistakably arrogant. She wasn't merely answering, she was lecturing, towering over the questions as if Gayle were on trial. Gayle's eyes flickered at her first real crack. Palms pressed together, voice steady but steel-laced. "I hear you, Meghan, but viewers want clarity. These aren't palace criticisms linear, they're questions people genuinely have." Meghan leaned forward, posture regal, voice heavy with superiority. "And maybe the public should stop expecting me to spoon-feed answers to petty doubts. My life isn't a public court case. I owe no explanations." The words landed like a hammer. Gayle seemed momentarily taken aback. The control room debated cutting to commercial, but the producers stayed. This was television lightning. Gayle adjusted her glasses, voice calm but edged with authority. "I respect that you feel you don't owe explanations. But when public statements shape perceptions of powerful institutions, questions are inevitable. That's journalism, not bias." Meghan smirked. "And I respect that you think this is journalism, Gayle. But let's be honest, to its entertainment. If you wanted spectacle, congratulations, you've got it." The audience gasped. The studio fell silent. Gayle's expression remained calm outwardly, but her eyes betrayed thinning patience. She had interviewed presidents, survivors, and world leaders, but never been condescended to so brazenly on her own set. "We're here for an honest conversation, Meghan. That's all," she said steadily. Meghan leaned back, arms crossed, smirk unshaken. "Perhaps you should learn how to ask honest questions instead of parroting palace spin." The insult hung heavily. Gayle's composure held, but the storm was building. The studio audience shifted uneasily. The controlled calm of Gayle King was near its limit. Meghan, oblivious, continued her untouchable act. The cracks widened, soon to break. Every question Gayle asked was calm and measured. Every answer from Meghan was sharp, dismissive, and superior. It became a chess match where Meghan refused to follow the rules, knocking over pieces when cornered. Gayle continued, internal patience thinning. So, Meghan, you've spoken about focusing on service. What does service mean to you outside the monarchy? Meghan laughed lightly, shaking her head. Service is impact, not titles. Something I've been explaining for years. That people still need me to define it shows how far behind society is. Her tone was cutting, arms crossed, chin lifted. Gayle nodded but pressed gently. Some might say your actions, books, documentaries, interviews seem more focused on telling your story than serving others. How do you respond? Meghan's smirk returned. Perception is shaped by bias, Gayle. Those determined to see me as self-serving will never recognize my work. It's not my job to correct ignorance. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Her words were not only directed at Gayle but anyone questioning her. Gayle remained composed. I understand, Meghan. But let's talk specifics. Your new projector, how does it differ from previous initiatives? Meghan waved a hand dismissively. It's not about being different. It's building on my legacy. Sometimes these questions feel redundant. My record speaks for itself. A quiet gasp swept through the studio. She hadn't just dismissed the questioner, she dismissed Gayle. Gayle stared, pressed lips together, inhaled deliberately. Patience, professionalism, empathy had been tested, yet Meghan's arrogance crossed into disrespect. Gayle tried one last time. Meghan, our viewers want details. Can you share an example? Meghan rolled her eyes subtly. I didn't come to recite bullet points. People can read about it online. I don't need to spoon feed. The audience audibly gasped. Gayle's hand tightened on her notes, voice calm. Well, some argue that appearing on national television carries an expectation to share directly with the public. That's accountability. Meghan leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Accountability. I've been scrutinized every day since marrying into that family. I won't bend over backward for critics who will never support me. The dismissiveness was like sparks in gasoline. Gayle sat straighter, mask cracking. I'm not your critic. My viewers expect questions that matter. And your tone doesn't make it easy for them to see the sincerity of your message. Meghan laughed coldly. Maybe sincerity makes people uncomfortable. Gayle, maybe you and your viewers aren't ready for someone who refuses to play the game. The words cut like knives. Audience shifted, some sympathetic to Gayle, others shocked at Meghan's audacity. Gayle placed notes down, locking eyes, irritation flashing. Meghan, people aren't asking you to play a game. They ask for respect or for questions. The audience, this platform. Meghan smirked, voice dripping superiority. Perhaps respect should be mutual, Gayle. The studio was silent. Tension thick. Gayle had tried patience and empathy, but Meghan's arrogance was unbearable. CBS Mornings' calm veneer was on the verge of shattering. The storm built from the first question was ready to break, and everyone felt it. The air was electric. Meghan Markle sat with arms crossed, chin raised, presiding, not visiting. Gayle King, papers untouched, leaned forward, tone finally stripped of morning calm. Meghan, she said firmly, you've made it clear you feel misunderstood, even attacked. But sitting here, the way you've spoken to me and this audience here, it doesn't show strength. It shows arrogance. The audience gasped. Meghan blinked rapidly, composure cracking. Excuse me? She snapped. Gayle held steady. You've dismissed every question. Rolled your eyes. Implied viewers are ignorant if they don't instantly agree. That's not leadership or change-making, that's entitlement. Shocked silence. Meghan's lips trembled. How dare you? She began. Gayle cut her off. No, Meghan. How dare you come here, ask for a platform, then insult those you claim to serve? How dare you present yourself as a victim while dismissing accountability as bias or conspiracy? The world has given you opportunities most can only dream of. Meghan's face flushed, eyes glistening. Gayle pressed on. You talk about hating the monarchy, yet cling to the Duchess title. You speak of service, yet your projects are overshadowed by your narrative. If you weren't married to Harry, none of this would exist. The audience gasped again. Meghan's breath caught. Gayle stood, voice carrying decades of authority. You act like the palace owes you deference. You're not above accountability. On this stage, you're not a duchess. You're a petulant girl stamping her feet. Tears filled Meghan's eyes. You a broken bar. You don't understand a broken bar. I understand perfectly, Gayle said sharply. This isn't about race, protocols, or mental health. This is jealousy. You wanted Kate and William's respect and role. When you couldn't have it, you burned the house down on your way out. Meghan sobbed. The words landed hard. She stood suddenly, chair scraping. A broken bar is unacceptable. I don't have to take this. Gayle, standing firm, didn't flinch. Then don't. If you can't handle questions everyone else fears, maybe you shouldn't be here. Stop pretending to serve others when you only serve yourself. Meghan grabbed her purse, shoulders shaking, turned for the exit. Cameras captured each trembling step, tears on her cheeks. Silence filled the studio, broken only by echoes of her heels. Once the door closed, the audience erupted into whispers. Some admired Gayle, others shocked, but none could deny witnessing television history. Gayle stood tall, voice calm, facing the cameras. Ladies and gentlemen, this is live television. The truth is sometimes uncomfortable, but it matters. The director cut to commercial, but the legacy of the exchange was cemented. Meghan came to promote a project but left in tears, image bruised, arrogance laid bare. Gayle, who had tried to remain composed, had spoken words millions wished they could. It was over. A routine morning show became one of the most explosive confrontations in broadcast history. Meghan walked off, Gayle's words echoing across media. The question remained, was Gayle right to confront Meghan, or did she go too far? The audience was left to decide.